This is the time set for a post-seizure hearing in the state of Arizona versus Sidney McKinley, which is docket number 23L9. Is the state ready to proceed?
I'm calling you for the state, yes we are.
And Ms. McKinley, are you ready to proceed? Yes. The record reflects that Ms. McKinley is not represented by counsel. And as a preliminary matter, I will note that there has been a motion filed by the law office of Timothy Ducott, a motion to intervene on behalf of 2 organizations and 9 individuals. Have the parties received a copy of the motion to intervene? Mr.
Yes.
Yu, do you wish to take a position on that motion?
I take no position.
Okay. And Ms. McKinley, did you receive a copy of that motion?
No.
Okay, that is a motion that was filed on behalf of Hand Over Rover, Yaqui Animal Rescue, and 9 individuals. It's a request for these individuals to intervene in this case. You did not get a copy of that?
No.
Is counsel from the Schill Law Firm present?
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel, did you provide a copy of the motion to intervene to Ms. McKinley?
Your Honor, I'm here to argue it. I did not serve her with it.
You did not serve her with it, and I did not obviously make a ruling on it because the parties obviously have a right to respond to any motion that's filed. Do you have a copy for Ms. McKinley? Okay, Ms. McKinley, that's a copy for you. And my understanding is you are asking the court to reserve ruling on that motion at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. It relates to a pending civil matter that
Right.
gets to the heart of the issue, and so it would need to be stayed.
Okay, and obviously it's a separate issue from this matter.
Yes, Your Honor.
That is the Superior Court case.
Yes, Your Honor. As cited in the motion, I think the case number is included in that.
Okay. And Ms. McKinley, before we actually get started with this, would you like to have a chance to review that motion?
Yes.
Okay. Had a chance to review it?
Yes.
Okay, let me explain the process. This is a civil proceeding. In this case, the state must present evidence to prove by preponderance that you, the named defendant, subjected animals to cruel mistreatment, cruel neglect, or abandonment. The way it works is the state presents its case. You'll get a chance to ask the state witnesses questions. You may also present evidence on your own behalf. I do need to advise you at this point that this matter is being recorded. Anything you say may be used against you in the future. If there's some criminal prosecution, you have an absolute right to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you have any questions about the procedure that will follow this afternoon?
No.
Okay. And do you have any witnesses or any evidence you'd like to present?
None this time.
Okay. And I understand that the state has had a chance to mark exhibits?
That's correct, Judge.
Okay. On September 23rd, 2023, 60 animals were seized from Ms. McKinley. 5 were deceased and 55 were actually seized. Ms. McKinley, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is you're not challenging the seizure of all 55. You are challenging the seizure of 47 of the 55. Is that correct?
No. Yeah, so.
Okay, and I think the biggest issue in this case is we have a lot of animals I'm going to have to make decisions on. So I'm trying to make sure that I understand. So you said no.
Yes.
So how many animals are you challenging the seizure of?
13.
13.
Right.
1-3.
Right. Can I, do you want me to explain? Or?
Well, and I think the state was on notice that there were 47 animals that were being challenged as far as the seizure. Is that correct, Mr. Yu?
That's correct, Judge.
Okay. So why don't you tell me now which, you have a list of the animals.
Right.
Okay. And the state has the list of animals. So you have withdrawn your request with regard to 47. Now it's only 13.
Correct.
So at this point, why don't you tell us which animals you are challenging the seizure of?
So, the original reason why, I was told it was all or nothing originally. I was told I had to fight for all or take nothing, which is why I made that decision.
Okay.
Just so you are aware.
Okay.
And then several hours later when I came back, they said you can choose, but there was no way to identify which animal was which, meaning there's no way to identify. I know.
There are a lot of animals at issue. Okay.
So it was hard to determine who was who. So I met with Detective Bassi later last week, and we went over just the dogs that the personal family dogs
Okay.
that have been with me for my family for almost 10 years. And those are the dogs that I am asking.
And since they're personal family dogs, is it correct for me to assume that they have names?
Yes,
Because the list I have doesn't have names for every dog that was seized.
correct.
Okay.
So, may I speak?
Yes.
Really quick. Because of the nature of the case, because of the safety of myself, the dogs, and my residents, I spoke with Detective
Spoke with a detective.
regarding the fact that because of the nature of the case, the safety of it, and everything else, she and I went over a list in detail,
Okay.
and she said she would take that list with her and she would talk to the prosecutor about it, so that, in other words, we wouldn't have to name the names. They would be either numbered, or there would be a way to identify them without calling out the names because of what is going on outside this courtroom.
Okay. And Mr. Yu, do you have any information regarding that?
Your Honor, this is the first that I've heard that she was requesting on 47 back, Judge.
And which detective did you speak with?
Bassi.
Detective Bassi seated to my right. We did have conversations about her coming in to have a talk with her, but there had been no formal request or change in what is requested. So I just assumed that was an answer, and I was waiting for 47.
Okay. In light of the fact that now 47 has been whittled down to 13, would you like an opportunity to maybe speak with Ms. McKinley?
Yeah, sure,
Okay. What we're going to...
if she wants.
Okay. Ms. McKinley, what we're going to do is we're going to go off the record and we're going to give you an opportunity to speak with the prosecutor, with the detective there who you had a conversation with. Okay?
Off the record.
Can we use maybe...
Sergeant basically actually talked to Elizabeth Herbert, who's another prosecutor in office.
Okay,
And so I wasn't privy to that conversation,
okay,
and she's not here.
okay,
All right. Thank you.
Off the record.
yes.
video?
all rise. The municipal court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Hussein presiding.
You can be seated. Okay, we are back in the record, State of Arizona versus McKinley. Have the parties been able to discuss which dogs are at issue?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And Mr. Yu, how are we going to proceed with regard to presenting evidence regarding those, it's 13 dogs, right?
Yes. Well, first, I'm going to present evidence of just them as an aggregate instead of each individual animal.
Okay.
I have a list of the animals that she does want back.
Okay.
I don't know, how is it arranged in your file, like the list of dogs?
It really isn't, I mean, I have a list of animals. Are they numbered? They're not really.
May I approach?
Yes, numbered. Let's see. And that's the list that I have. Okay.
And I went ahead and put the animal ID numbers on that list according to the Humane Society.
Okay.
Because the description, the court's description is somewhat vague.
Okay, so fair to say it's the ones that have numbers next to them.
Exactly.
Okay. With descriptions.
Numbers and descriptions.
Numbers
yes.
and descriptions.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you're ready to proceed?
I will ask that you enter an order at this point, basically releasing the rest of the dogs that are not being requested on the record in that way.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and that's correct, Ms. McKinley. Is that correct? Okay, at this point then, because you're withdrawing your request with regard to all but 13 of the dogs, 34 will be released and will remain with the Humane Society.
Yes.
Your Honor, as to the motion to intervene, is that as to the dogs listed on page 2 of that motion, are we now rendered moot with our request? And if so, is a record able to be made on that topic?
Yes. But let me make sure, I have your motion in front of me, let me make sure that it's,
Thank you, Your Honor.
that the animals of the owners that you represent would be the animals that she's no longer challenging.
Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
And you have a copy of that motion to intervene, Ms. McKinley, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you look at the listed animals?
Yeah, none of these are on the list I'm requesting. They're all
Okay.
going to be released.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
So at this point, you withdrawing your motion to intervene since you are no longer
I don't believe we would have standing at this point.
standing?
Your Honor.
Okay.
It's moot.
It is moot. You no longer have standing because the owners you represent are not interested in the balance of the dogs that Ms. McKinley is challenging.
Correct, Your Honor. Your Honor, I would not say we're not interested.
Well,
You're not claiming ownership.
You're not claiming ownership. And of course, you're certainly welcome to stay, but your motion is moot.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, counsel, you may call your first witness.
Your Honor, if it please the court, can I make a brief opening statement?
You may.
Your Honor, in some ways, this is not like any other post-seizure hearing. The civil traffic rules apply. The standard of proof is the same. But the similarity is kind of in there because now we're talking about not 47, but still 13 dogs. We're not talking about one dog or two dogs. And these dogs were seized during a search warrant that was served on her home on September 22nd. And in order for this court to determine whether or not Arizona Humane Society is going to retain custody of these 13 dogs, or you're going to allow the petitioner to regain custody, this court has to make a determination whether or not these dogs were subject to cruel neglect. Cruel neglect is determined by inquiry into whether or not the petitioner failed to provide the dogs necessary food, water, or shelter, or being the operative term, Your Honor. Because if this court finds by a preponderance of the evidence that the petitioner did fail to provide any of these necessary requirements, the seizure should be deemed upheld. And we expect evidence to show that the petitioner did fail, not only with regard to one of these requirements, but all of them. And at the end of the evidence, at the close of the evidence, I'm going to be asking you to deny the petitioner's request to have these dogs returned. Thanks, Judge.
And Ms. McKinley, at this point, did you want to make any kind of opening statement?
Is I'm trying to make a statement.
You can make a statement now, or you can wait to make a statement before you present your case. Or you don't have to make a statement at all. It's up to you.
I will wait.
Okay.
That's okay.
You may call your first witness.
Thank you, Judge. State calls Ruthie Jesus.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony given in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please take the witness stand. You may proceed.
Ms. Jesus, can you state your first name and spell your last name for the record?
First name is Ruthie, last name is Jesus, J-E-S-U-S.
And how are you employed?
I am the Field Operations Manager at the Arizona Humane Society. I'm also a certified animal cruelty investigator and an emergency animal medical technician.
How long have you been employed with the Arizona Humane Society?
Next month will be 12 years, 10 years on the field operations team.
And so you've been a field operations manager for 2 years, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What did you have to do to become certified as an animal cruelty investigator?
I was certified through Colorado State University in a 120-hour certification class.
And what about your certification to be an emergency animal medical technician? What kind of training did you have to undergo to receive that certification?
I participated in 90 hours of in-house certification taught by a veterinarian at the Arizona Humane Society.
What are your current responsibilities with the Arizona Humane Society?
Currently, as a field operations manager, I supervise 12 certified animal cruelty investigators, dispatchers, and support staff, not only in the rescue of sick and injured pets in the greater Phoenix area, but we also contract with 15 different police departments in the investigation of animal crimes. I regularly supervise all cases investigated by my investigators.
The teams at AHS, how many calls do you guys respond to in a typical year?
This fiscal year, we are currently over 14,000 calls for service.
And what percentage of those calls involve animal cruelty investigations?
Over 70%.
Now, what was your role in this investigation?
As the manager, my job, again, to supervise the investigation as a whole. I was present and in the office the day that the initial call came into our dispatch team. I spoke to the investigator that was on scene the very first day that she was there, and I reviewed all notes, photos, through the entire set of the case, as well as was present for the search warrant.
What was the name of that investigator that you just referred to?
The initial investigator that responded to the scene was Investigator Miranda Nordstrom.
And then was there another investigator involved?
Yes, there were many. Field Supervisor Julie Bolchek also responded to the scene during one investigation, and then we did have a team of investigators for the search warrant.
How did AHS first become involved or realize that this issue is happening?
We received a phone call into our field dispatch office on September the 8th from a Chandler police officer who was at the scene of 1797 East Custler Lane in Chandler. He reported that there was potentially 20 plus dogs at the residence that may be special needs, living in filth conditions, and he reported a strong smell of urine and feces.
Based on that report, did AHS respond the next day?
Yes, we did. We responded for the first time on September the 9th.
And was that Investigator Nordstrom?
Yes, it was.
And what did Investigator Nordstrom notice when she arrived at the property?
The first thing was that there were quite a few bystanders, interested parties set up across the street that did approach her multiple times. When she approached the home, she was actually unable to make contact. There was quite a lot of activity in front of the residence.
Was she able to eventually to make it to the front door?
Yes, she did note in her report that there were quite a lot of flies near the front door, as well as a smell of ammonia and feces.
Did she attempt to make contact with the resident?
She did. She knocked and announced, as is our policy, several times. Nobody came out. She did hear barking. There was no physical contact made at that time. However, a neighbor did allow viewing access over their wall. She was only able to view a few dogs in the backyard. From that vantage point, it was very difficult to get a lot of detail.
Even though she was not able to reach the residence by knocking, was she able to reach somebody via the telephone?
Yes, that's correct. We did have records from previous history, and we were able to make contact with the animal owner and resident there. At that time, our previous history had identified her as April Addison. She was identified for this investigation as April McLaughlin.
You see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell her where she is seated relative to me
She
and
is
what
seated
she's wearing?
She's seated at the defense table wearing white tennis shoes, a brown shirt, and a gray sweater.
Your Honor, can the record reflect identification?
Yes.
This address that the investigator responds to, 1797 East Kessler Lane, is that in the city of Chandler?
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned an appointment was made on 9/9 for the investigator to return on 9/11, is that correct?
That is correct. Ms. McLaughlin stated that she was not comfortable coming out or being at the residence with everything that was going on out front of her residence. So she asked us to return on September the 11th.
Okay. So she was actually inside then?
I don't know that for certain, but that was our assumption.
Okay. When AHS went, well, did AHS return the property on 9/11?
Yes, we did. Investigator Nordstrom returned on that date.
And then what happened during that contact?
During that date, she was, again, unfortunately unable to make contact at the residence. She tried to call, she tried to knock. There was no one there for that appointment.
So Investigator Nordstrom tried to call the petitioner and tried to...
Yes. At that time, initially when she arrived, there was no response.
Okay. And that was an appointment, a previous appointment that had already been...
Correct. She had, normally our protocol would be to return the very next day when we haven't made contact. But since we were able to speak to her on the phone on the 9th, we rescheduled the appointment at her wishes on the 11th.
Okay. What were the observations that was made by Investigator Nordstrom while she was at the residence?
This time she was able to identify 5 to 6 dogs in the backyard. She couldn't ascertain that there was water available. She did note some dishes were overturned. She could see at least 2 dogs who appeared to be underweight and down in the hind.
Can I
Potentially.
just stop you right there? So no water, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And when you use the term down in hind, what does that mean?
We use the term down in the hind to refer to when an animal is dragging both back legs.
And you say that investigating Nordstrom did observe an animal that had this condition, is that correct?
Yes.
And did investigating Nordstrom also know something called body conditioning score?
Correct. So as part of our job, because we see animals on a regular basis, we assign what is called a body condition score to all animals that we view. We use the Purina scale, which is a scale of 1 to 9, with 4 or 5 being a healthy weight for breed and species. These dogs that she saw, at least 2 of them were identified to be under a body condition score 4, which would mean they were underweight.
The dog that she observed with that had the condition of being down in hind, did she observe anything else with regard to that?
Yes, it did appear from a distance that there were wounds on the back legs that were being dragged.
And then I believe you noted that there were 2 animals that Ms. Nordstrom made note of. What was the second animal?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Well, do you have your report in front of you?
I don't.
Do you recall what the body conditioning score was for the other dog that was observed?
Yes, there were 2 adult dogs that she identified, one I believe at a 3.5 and one at a 2.
Okay, so under the 4, is that what you said?
Correct, under the 4, which would mean both dogs would be considered underweight.
Do you remember if the dog with body conditioning score of 2.5, if there were anything else that was noted by the investigator?
I do not recall, other than the wounds that I initially noted on the back legs.
In terms of location of these dogs, were they out wandering around in the backyard, or were they enclosed in a pen? Or?
At least one was enclosed in a pen. The backyard is filled with a lot of debris. There's several pen-type structures and shade structures in the backyard.
At some point in time, did investigating Nordstrom consider calling the Chandler Police Department?
I believe she did. I think in the interim she was able to make contact with Ms. McLaughlin, and she stated that she wanted us to come back the following day.
So ultimately, that call was not placed at the police department because the petitioner got a hold of her through the phone.
Correct.
Okay. Was there an appointment scheduled on 9/11 for another date?
Yes, the appointment was scheduled for the following day on the 12th.
Okay, and was it investigating Nordstrom again that responded to that property?
Yes, Investigator Nordstrom and Field Supervisor Julie Bolchak.
Okay. Could you just go ahead and describe how that contact went?
They made contact with Ms. McLaughlin and started in the backyard. They asked her permission to walk through the home with her. They did identify, while they were there, 5 dogs that they felt were in need of immediate medical attention. As they walked through, they were able to count 25 to 30 total dogs. However, they were not given access to the bedrooms, the bathroom, or the garage. She was not comfortable allowing us in those areas, so we were confined to the backyard and the main living space. There was a strong smell of ammonia. However, it was evident that Ms. McLaughlin had been cleaning. She was sweating and there was cleaning supplies out.
So let me just get this straight. So contact was made first on September 9th, first on September 11th, is that correct?
Yes,
September 11th, she did not show up for that appointment.
correct.
And then returning it on September 12th, there were 2 full days in which for her to clean the residence, is that correct?
Well, theoretically, the Chandler police were there on September the 8th, so it's actually 4 days.
Okay. And the condition of the floors at that point in time, was that noted by the investigator?
Yes, they appeared to be clean, as if they had recently been cleaned.
And you mentioned the smell of ammonia. Why is that significant?
In my experience, when you work in homes with a large volume of animals, and you have a significant amount of urine and feces, the primary component of animal urine is ammonia. So that is the primary smell that you get when they have not been cleaned up after regularly.
And you did mention earlier that the doors to the rooms of the house were closed and they were not allowed access to those
Correct.
rooms. At some point, did she describe, I guess, the level of noise in there?
Yes, there were quite a few dogs inside. I think she noted at least 10 to 15 that were in crates and stacked. Dogs that are kept in crates like that can often be reactive. And so whether it was excitement or nerves, the sound was very high.
Sound meaning barking?
Yes, barking.
Okay. At some point in time, did Inspector Nordstrom notice something happened with one of the dogs that were on the property?
Yes, one of the 5 dogs that she wrote a notice of complaint for Ms. McLaughlin to follow up on medical treatment was identified as a small black and tan type dog, identified as Yazzie, that was prone to seizures. While they were doing their walkthrough, Yazzie did have a seizure. We were told it was due to the excitement level, so at that time they tried to exit to not rile up the dogs any further.
So at that point, they did exit and no more investigation was conducted inside them.
Correct. Without a search warrant, we cannot force any owner to provide us access to all rooms in their home.
Was there a conversation, based on what was observed in terms of the estimate of 25 to 30 dogs in the house based on the barking and the 10 to 15 that were actually seen, was there a conversation that took place regarding owner surrender?
Yes, when we identify any owner that is struggling with the volume of pets that they currently have and the ability to care for them appropriately, we always offer resources, including owner surrender to the Arizona Humane Society, in an attempt to give them the ability to afford care for remaining pets.
What was the petitioner's attitude towards that offer?
At that time, she was adamant that she did not want us taking any of her pets, and she did not feel comfortable surrendering any to us.
I'm going to go back to the beginning of the testimony regarding is it accurate to say that the Humane Society identified 5 dogs that needed treatment?
Correct.
At that point in time?
We wrote a notice of complaint to document the 5 dogs that needed treatment. She was given a time frame that varied between 24, 48 hours, and a week to comply with medical care.
I just want to, let's talk about the 24 hours, then those dogs that were identified, would those be the ones that would be more immediately in need of
Absolutely. So at that time, Supervisor Volchek spent a large amount of time trying to educate Ms. McLaughlin as to the condition of her animals and what their necessities might be. She even discussed end-of-life care. That the most severe dog that was given a 24-hour notice for vet treatment was identified as Chauncey, who was vocalizing, struggling to stand, laying in his own urine and feces.
Do you recall what the body conditioning score was for Chauncey?
If I recall correctly, it's a 2 of 9.
And the other 2 dogs that were identified, was one of them named Butters?
Yes, sir.
And what did Butters exhibit in terms of condition?
Butters was also considered underweight. I believe it was a 2.5 of 9 on the Purina scale. And Butters had open drag marks on the back legs.
But Butters also had the condition of being down and behind as you referred to.
Yes, that's correct.
And then the 3rd dog that needed this immediate assistance within 24 hours, was that dog named Rudy?
Yes.
And what conditions was Rudy exhibiting?
Rudy was also grossly underweight. I believe down and behind as well with open wounds.
And that was again due to dragging?
Yes, I believe so.
After that visit on the 12th, did you or one of your investigators have a follow-up conversation with the petitioner?
Yes, Investigator Nordstrom called Ms. McLaughlin on the 13th to confirm that she was actually going to the vet or had made appointments. She claimed that she was currently at the vet for the first few animals. We also tried to discuss with her again the option for voluntarily surrendering some of her animals to reduce her numbers and be able to afford care for the ones she was keeping.
And what was the petitioner's reaction to that offer?
She again declined.
Did she explain why she thought surrendering the dogs would not be something that she wanted to do?
Initially, she did not want us to surrender to the Humane Society because she was concerned that the dogs wouldn't go to an appropriate home. That day during the phone call, she stated that she did not want to surrender to our agency because she did not want to have the appearance of animals being loaded onto an Arizona Humane Society marked ambulance. At that time, the investigator did offer to meet her at a separate location if that made her more comfortable, but at that time she declined.
So she essentially was afraid that somebody might see or know that she was surrendering the animals,
Correct.
and that would create a bad image, essentially.
That was her statement, yes.
And at that point in time, was it Inspector Nordstrom's belief that she wanted to accept new dogs?
Yes, she did say that she had other dogs that she was potentially planning to accept.
And let's move ahead to September 19th. On September 19th, was there a follow-up visit to the home?
Correct. Investigator Nordstrom again responded to the residents and made contact with Ms. McLaughlin. She did present the dogs and medical records that she had been given a notice for.
So it was confirmed that in fact she did bring the dogs into the vet as directed, is that correct?
Yes.
And I want to talk first about Butters. Butters was one of the dogs identified as needing care. What was observed by Inspector Nordstrom regarding Butters?
Butters' back legs were wrapped at the time of her inspection.
Was she also diagnosed with a condition?
Yes, Butters was also diagnosed with kennel cough. Investigator Nordstrom did point out that traditionally kennel cough is considered very contagious, and most dogs that have kennel cough should be quarantined.
And was Butters quarantined?
No, Butters was not quarantined, and Ms. McLaughlin claimed that that was not necessary.
And why did she give an explanation for that?
During the course of the investigation, she had presented baskets that had miscellaneous medications in them and wound and bandage supplies. So basically, she stated that she had medication in case somebody else got sick.
And was that an appropriate, correct or appropriate response to a quarantine order?
Not in my opinion, no.
The second, I want to talk about the second dog, Rudy. What was noted regarding Rudy?
Rudy was, I believe, also outside and still continued to be down in the hind, and I believe Rudy had at least one limb wrapped as well.
And then the last dog, Chauncey. What was the condition of Chauncey?
Chauncey continued to be lateral, did not rise while we were present. And in the outdoor areas, there's artificial turf. And Chauncey was laying what appeared to be in his own urine and feces.
I'm going to show you what I previously marked as State's Exhibit number 1 and let the record reflect. I'm going to show that to the petitioner. Can you tell me what it's State's Exhibit number 1, a series of 3 photographs stapled together?
The first photograph is of Rudy, a white and tan pit bull terrier type dog. Down in the hind, you can see both back feet are wrapped. The second photograph is a little bit of a close-up. You can tell that the back limbs are at a little bit of an awkward angle in the rocks. Again, he's down in the hind, you can't feel them. And the last photograph, a brown brindle type dog, is Chauncey with white paws. He is lateral, and you can see towards his hind end a somewhat large pile of feces.
So those pictures accurately reflect the condition of those animals on 9/19 during that visit?
Correct, and they are time and date stamped from our agency.
Your Honor, I move admission of States 1.
Any objection? States 1 is admitted.
You talked about Chauncey laying in urine. Like, I can't see urine on that. Why would you think that Chauncey was laying in urine?
At that time, Investigator Nordstrom felt that he was laying in his own urine because of the smell. There was a more fresh stench.
At some later time, did you yourself have the ability to go into the yard?
Yes, I was there when the search warrant was served, and during my initial walkthrough, you had to walk through the backyard across several pieces of artificial turf, and they squished when you walked on them. And given the stench, my assumption would be it was urine and feces.
After the investigator observed these 3 of the 5 that were ordered to the vet, did she make a request to go inside the home?
She did. She wanted to walk through. Every time we return to a residence, we try to make sure we can view more of the property and make sure we're getting our eyes on everyone. But at that time, Ms. McLaughlin denied admittance into her home.
At some point in time during that contact, did the petitioner express frustration over the fact that her address was appearing on the internet?
Yes, during the course of the investigation, there was a large volume of private interest, social media, private rescues, and so she was very distressed. It's one of the reasons why we struggled to get contact with her and to have her meet us for our appointments. Investigator Nordstrom again offered owner surrender, and Ms. McLaughlin did agree to surrender 2 dogs at that time, but requested that we meet her at a different location along the canal.
And did that occur?
Yes, it did. We took 2 dogs into our custody as owner surrenders.
And it was basically like around the corner or behind the house?
Yes.
With regard to her frustration as to her address being released, did she make a statement regarding moving? Do you recall?
Yes, she did. She had noted initially, early on in the investigation, that part of the reason she moved to Chandler was because they did not have an animal ordinance, and she definitely felt like it was time to move again.
To another city without an ordinance?
Correct.
After this visit, at some point in time during the course of your duties, did you become aware that there was a search warrant that had been sought and issued by a court?
During the course of the investigation, I had been in regular contact with Sergeant Bassi of the Chandler Police Department. She is our liaison and our police contact. So we've been discussing different tactics to use, how to work the case, how to get as much information as she might need. So a couple of days later, we actually had the call pended out past the 22nd to try to make contact with her again. But I was notified by Sergeant Bassi that she had had a meeting with a private veterinarian, received a large volume of records, including records for animals that were never shown to either Supervisor Volchek or Investigator Nordstrom, and we had not seen them in her custody, and at that time she was seeking a search warrant.
And then did you later have the conversation with Sergeant Bassi and after she actually obtained that search warrant?
Yes, we did. There was a lot of preparation involved in order to organize a team to respond with the Chandler Police Department.
I want to just take you to that day. You were part of the team that responded to the house. Just tell us what happened.
We arrived on scene after Chandler Police had already secured Ms. McLaughlin in the driveway in her vehicle. She had 3 German Shepherd type dogs in her vehicle. We waited as per our protocol until we were cleared to go in with the sergeant. Myself and my lead investigator, Dan McGrath, did the initial walkthrough of the premise with Sergeant Bassi. When we entered the backyard, there were no dogs loose. However, as you walk through the gate, again, there was the same debris that I had seen in earlier investigation photos.
Let me just stop you right there real briefly. I apologize. Was Inspector McGrath as part of this search, do you recall?
Investigator McGrath works with the Arizona Humane Society, and as the manager, I take points as far as liaison between the police and the Arizona Humane Society. He authored the report for that day, taking the lead on the evidentiary value.
What was noted by Inspector McGrath while you guys were in the driveway of that residence, even before you made entry into the backyard?
There was an extreme smell. The garbage was overflowing, but in my experience, that smell was urine and feces, and potentially a smell of decomposition. Sometimes that smell gets muddled with severe urine and feces, but it did smell like decomposition.
Now, why would there be a smell of decomposition?
We did find 5 deceased animals in the freezer towards the end of the investigation, but I didn't find an explanation as to why there was one in the front driveway.
Tell the judge what happened when you guys entered into the backyard.
When we came into the backyard, again, large amount of debris, heavy smell of urine and feces, a large volume of flies, walking across the artificial turf that was, again, squishy. The dogs knew we were there, so you could hear a large volume of barking. You approached to a sliding glass door on the back patio. We waited, and when we were permitted, we did open that sliding glass door.
Before talking about what happened, or what you observed on the inside, let's, in terms of the yard, did you observe any water present in the yard?
There were more than half a dozen metal dishes in the backyard, but all of them were overturned or empty.
And what happened when you walked, assume after making all these observations in the yard, when you approached? Let the record reflect, I'm showing petition which been marked as Stacy Exhibit number 2. Is that a series of 6 photographs stapled?
Yes, it is.
And if you could start with just the first photograph, what is that photograph?
This first photograph is taken of the backyard. This is not a time and dated photograph, so I know it was taken by the crime scene photographer and not our team. You can see a few dogs out. This would be after we opened the back door and allowed loose dogs into the yard. Again, very large wall of debris on the left-hand side. The second photograph shows a couple of dogs behind a pen and multiple dishes out. These 2 dishes here were the ones that we were providing water to the dogs that were coming out of the home.
At some later time.
At a later time, correct. They were initially empty. This third photograph of a small Frenchie type dog in front of a dish is after we had provided him water. The fourth photograph is of the far side of the yard where there's a shade covering, a Toronto bed, and another patch of the artificial turf that has some fecal matter that you can see on the top side of the photograph. And then the last photograph is a close-up, and this photograph you can see that the entire ground, part of the pole, and the sidewalk are covered in flies.
Your Honor, I move for admission of States 2.
Any objection? States 2 is admitted.
So you are still outside. At some point in time, you enter. What happened as that patio door opens?
As the patio door opened, a large number of dogs came tearing outside. They went directly for the water dishes or the bowls that were empty. At that time, there was nothing for them to drink. They were running around. There were at least 3 that were down in the hind end. And the smell intensified significantly with the door open.
At that point in time, other than noticing some dogs that were down in hind, did you make any other observations at that point in time regarding their condition?
At least 2 of the dogs that I observed appeared to be underweight, under body condition score 4.
Did Inspector McGrath, what did Inspector McGrath notice about, I guess, their paws or coats of some of these animals?
Several of the dogs that initially came out were white or light tan in color. One of them had a little bit longer of a coat, Chihuahua type mix, and he noted in his report, and I observed for myself, that their paws were covered in feces and urine, and their coats were stained.
What was the condition of the floors inside the home when you observed them?
That front entryway was covered in paw prints, but barely clear of debris. There was an easier walkway in the kitchen area. As you progressed through the house, there was a larger amount of urine and feces in carpeted areas and more debris and more difficulty walking through the main portion of the house.
Were there dogs observed that were in crates?
Yes, from the kitchen through the dining area, through the main living room, there were dogs stacked in crates, meaning 1 or 2 dogs on top of another dog, which is very concerning with regard to hygienic practices, because obviously if the dog on top has an accident, it leaks onto the dog beneath it. Some of the crates were partially covered, so it was very dim in the room. We had trouble with appropriate light, so we had flashlights. I could see multiple dogs in crates that had wadded up pee pads or wadded up towels, appeared to be more than a day's worth of urine and feces in the bottom of the crates, and I could see open injuries on the dogs in crates.
What type of injuries would you observe?
One of the dogs in the front crate had bone exposure on a hind limb. It appeared multiples had hind end that was either bloody or caked in feces.
Did you observe any bowls of water in these kennels?
Almost all of the kennels had bowls in them, but all of the bowls that I observed in crates were dry or overturned and empty. There were a couple of dishes near the sliding glass door. Those also appeared to be dry or had a very small amount of water in the basin.
Let the record reflect, I'm showing states 3 to petitioner. I'm going to show you what I marked that states exhibit number 3. Is that a series of photographs depicting the interior of the home?
Yes, it is. The first photograph is in the main tiled area. There's a large pile of what appears to be diarrhea. Could be vomit, but as I recall, it smelled of diarrhea. The next photograph was also taken in the main area where you can see there's a wadded up towel that appears to also be covered in feces. And then it appears that feces has been tracked. At the time of this photograph, you can see that the fire department was already inside.
So that picture was taken after the fire?
Correct. This third photograph is an initial photograph taken by us of one of the bedrooms where there are multiple dogs in stacked crates. You can see wadded up pee pads, some bedding, appears to be kibble and feces intermixed on the carpet, and one loose dog down in the hind end. And the last photograph was taken in the living room space that also shows filth, feces, stray dog kibble, some toys.
State would move for admission of 6-3.
Any objection, Ms. McKinley? Please admitted.
How many bedrooms was this house have?
Well, the main living area appeared to be being used as a bedroom, but there were 2 bedrooms with closed doors and 1 bathroom with a closed door.
What was observed when the doors to the bedrooms was open?
The doors were a little bit difficult to open and the visibility was low in the bedrooms. The first bedroom had, I believe, 3 dogs loose in it and a large amount of debris and items. The bathroom in between the 2 bedrooms had 2 dogs inside.
Well, I wanted to just, I'm sorry, if I could just stick to the bedrooms for now. I apologize.
Okay.
In terms of, was there anything else that you noted other than those dogs in the bedroom?
There were bowls in the bedroom, but they were empty and dry.
Okay. And then what about the condition of the floors in there?
The bedrooms had mostly carpet, some areas where there was carpet ripped up or partially ripped up, but there was a lot of filth in those rooms because of the carpet and a large amount of debris. It was very difficult for the animals to move around that were loose.
But when you say filth, what do you mean by that?
By filth, I mean mud, feces, urine, debris.
I'm going to show you what I marked as stage 4, record reflect journal to petition. Is that a series of 8 pictures stapled together?
Yes, that's correct.
Do these pictures depict the bedroom that we just previously discussed?
Yes, that's correct. This is one of the bedrooms where you can see a playpen that at one point was used to house animals, an open kennel, and at least one loose dog. You can see that the carpet appears to be quite filthy, and there's an overturned dish.
And is there also depicted there kennels stacked?
Correct. There are 2 kennels stacked on top of each other on the right-hand side. The next photo is a different angle. You have a bowl in this room as well, but it is actually empty. There's also what appears to be kibble strewn on the floor with feces and urine. A blanket that I think at some point was used to cover the window was torn down or had fallen, and there's a wall of items and boxes. The third photo is a close-up underneath the table with quite a few piles of feces, more than you would expect from a day or 2. The next photo is that area I was mentioning before where it appears that part of the carpet had been pulled out, but underneath the carpet the concrete is stained and there's multiple piles of feces and again strewn dog kibble.
Stained with what?
Appears to be feces. Part of that is the color of the concrete, but part of that is definitely fecal matter.
Okay.
The next photo is taken of the walls of one of the bedrooms. You can see along the baseboards there is, again, kibble, feces, and what appears to be urine spray and or diarrhea spray on the wall. The next photo is just a different angle of the same entryway that is missing carpeting. From this angle, you can see the wall of debris, a crate, overturned dishes, and again, a decent amount of fecal matter on the floor. The next photo is partial closet, different bedroom. A large amount of debris, an overturned water dish, fecal matter on the floor, staining. And the last photo is the first initial bedroom that had items overturned.
State moves for admission of stage 4.
Any objection, Ms. McKinley? Stage 4 is admitted.
You started talking about bathrooms. Let's go there now. What did you observe in the bathroom?
So in the bathroom between the 2 bedrooms, it was very difficult to open the door. There were 2 dogs contained therein. There was a black and tan German Shepherd type dog that was laid on all 4 legs, appeared to be unable to rise, laying in his own urine and feces. There was another white and gray husky type dog in a pink plastic kiddie pool with some toys and dishes, and appeared to have a large open wound at the base of the tail. The tail appeared to be necrotic and was already partially missing.
Did you later identify that dog by the name of Ruby?
Yes, we did.
Was there any water in that bathroom?
There was not.
I'm going to show you what I marked as citizen file, which for the record I'm showing to petition. Is that a series of photographs stapled that would depict the condition of the bathroom?
Yes, that's correct. The first photo is of the German Shepherd type dogs laid on all 4 legs, laying in his feces. The second photo is of a different angle where he's looking at Investigator McGrath. Again, there's a large amount of feces spread and splayed. My guess would be smeared when he was trying to rise. The third photo is of the dog later identified as Ruby in a pink kiddie pool, You can see in the shot there is a metal dish in there, but it was dry and empty. The next photo is a close-up of Ruby's hind end, where you can see she's partially missing part of her tail. There is a large gaping open wound at the base of that tail, and another open wound that appears to be infected on the left hind leg. And then the last, what number are we on?
Second to last.
Second to last photo was taken after the fire department had come in and removed the 2 dogs from that bathroom. You can see what remains is feces smeared all over the floor, dry kibble on the floor, and a couple of dishes that are on the countertop and would not have been reachable to the dogs.
Were they full or?
They appear to be empty, but I can't tell from this angle. We identified early on when we did our first walkthrough there was no available water for the dogs. And the last photograph is of the bathtub, which has half dozen miscellaneous bottles of shampoo and lotions. And the bottom of that cup has a layer of filth.
State we move for admission of states number 5.
Any objection? States 5 is admitted.
Where did you go next after the bathroom?
At that time, what was most pressing was to complete a head count. So our head count of dogs on the premise, as best as we could tell, was 55, significantly higher than our previous walkthrough.
At some point in time, did you make entry into the garage of this home?
Yes, we initially had walked past the garage without realizing it was dark. The light was clearly not on underneath the door, so it wasn't until after we'd done our initial walkthrough that we came back out and Investigator McGrath heard barking on the other side of the door. At that time, he opened the door. It was completely dark. It was not air conditioned. We used our radar gun to temperature the room, and it temped after 6 p.m. at over 90 degrees inside. There were 4 dogs crated, one stacked on top of the others, and one loose dog, later identified as Abby. There was no water available in any of the crates or for the loose dog, Abby. There was one metal dish that she had access to, and in front of my investigator, she attempted to drink from it, but it was empty. We left the door open so she could follow us out. And at that time, we did provide her with water. We took about 3 minutes of footage of her drinking. And I also did a basic medical exam where I assessed her skin turgor. Skin turgor is the metric for which we determine an animal's dehydration. At that time, she did appear to be dehydrated. I estimated her dehydration level at 7 to 10%, which would imply she had been without water for a prolonged period of time.
So, just get this straight, that dog that was roaming tried to drink from dry bowl.
Correct.
Did you bring that dog later out to the yard?
Correct. So that garage door is part of the backyard area, and so all we had to do was open the door. She has some sort of neurological disorder, was very ataxic, wobbly on her feet, had at least one paw bandaged with a dirty bandage, and she followed us out. She was a very sweet dog.
And then she drank for 3 minutes?
Yes, we actually had to stop her. At some point, a dog will try to ingest so much water that they will then vomit it. So we took the footage of her, and then we had to stop her and take the water away from her.
You mentioned that the temperature showed to be 90.5 degrees. Was the garage open? Was there any ventilation going into that room?
There was not. The only access was at the far end of a garage door, which we later determined by the fire department and by Ms. McLaughlin's own admission did not work. So the only entrance into that garage area was that door that was closed.
Your Honor, what exhibit are we?
6.
6. Let the record show that I'm showing exhibit number 6 to petitioner. I'm going to show you what I've marked as exhibit 6. Is that a series of photographs that would accurately depict what you observed in the garage?
That's correct. There are 4 crated dogs, one on top of the other. The dog crated on top of one of the others is we identified as Chauncey, and Abby is loose in the room. The next photograph is just a slightly different angle where you can clearly see that the first dog crate has one bowl inside that is empty. The next photograph shows a brown Labrador type dog that is down and behind. One dish is overturned, the other is dry, and there's a significant amount of filth and fecal matter in the bottom of the crate. No towel, bedding, or pee pad. The next photo is slightly obscured by debris, but you can see that there's a mattress there. You can see that another dog has a dish that is also empty. The next photo shows the stacked dogs, and the dog on the bottom, black and tan shepherd type dog, has a completely overturned dish, no other dish available. This shows the long view and the volume of debris that barricades the garage door. And from another angle, I believe this is along the right-hand side as you enter from the garage door, the external garage door.
Let me stop you there. In that
Sure.
particular photograph, is there pet wheelchairs that you can see that was in that room?
Yes, this is not my photograph, but I do see that, and they appear to be in pristine boxes unopened.
Were any of the dogs that you observed during the search warrant using any wheelchairs?
Not a single one. And the last photo here is of one of the other dogs crated in the garage area. Dish overturned, kibble, fecal matter on what appears to be a piece of carpeting.
State would move for admission of state 6.
Any objection? State 6 is admitted.
At some point in time later, were these dogs removed from the kennels?
Correct. Initially, because of the volume of loose dogs, we didn't want anyone to escape the yard. The team that was with me began by impounding all of the loose dogs and loading them onto ambulances. Before we could get started in the interior of the home, the Chandler Fire Department arrived and made an assessment that the air quality was not safe for us to go back in.
Let me just stop you there real briefly. I apologize. When the dogs were removed from these kennels, was there a better view? Would that become such that you could get a better view of what was inside the kennel with the dogs no longer in them?
Yes, as the fire department went inside in full hazmat gear, they brought out the crated dogs to our team and we removed them from the kennels. As we were doing that, then you could see the condition of the kennels.
Okay, I'm going to show you what I've previously marked as state 7, which has to show the petitioner. Are those photographs of those empty kennels?
Yes, they are. The top one stacked on top of one underneath it clearly shows a wadded up towel, appears to be full of fecal matter, an empty can of what's possibly peanut butter, and just general filth, as well as the cage and wiring of the crate is caked in hair and feces. The second photo is of another empty crate stacked on top of another. There's a large fresh pile of feces, what appears to be a pool of urine, an empty dog dish, and a wadded up towel covered in feces.
In your opinion, would it take more than a day for the kennels to get into that type of condition?
Yes, these kinds of kennels, you can pull out the basin and clean them very easily, but the cage, particularly the doors that are caked in urine and feces and hair, has built up, very clearly built up over time.
And I'm moving to number 7.
Any objection? State 7 is admitted.
While you were at that, how long were you at that location on that evening?
My team pulled a 20-hour shift. I believe we left the scene at least 2 in the morning.
So you had the opportunity to observe the condition of most of these dogs that were taken from contact, right?
Correct. I kept the log sheets and identified every dog as they were brought out, as well as observing many of the dogs as when we returned to the trauma hospital at Arizona Humane Society.
How many were ultimately seized?
We seized 55 live souls and 5 deceased animals from the freezer.
And and you had the opportunity to observe the condition of these 55 animals?
Yes, it was initially difficult to see inside the home with dim lighting, the extent of their injuries. It was also dark at the side of the ambulance, but I was able to identify many dogs with open wounds on the hind end that I would characterize as urine scald from sitting in their own urine and feces for an extensive period of time. I saw multiple animals with open wounds on their legs for dogs that were down in the hind end, which would appear to be from dragging. And I saw multiple dogs with open bone exposure.
You mentioned urine scald. What is that?
Urine scald happens when an animal cannot get out of their own urine and feces for a prolonged period of time. In my experience, it does not occur overnight or even in a couple of days. It takes a period of time for the fur to fall out, the wounds to appear red and swollen, and the tissue to deteriorate and open.
And you mentioned sores. Were some of those sores necrotic?
Correct. Some of the dogs, more than others, had a strong smell of infection. When you've been doing this job long enough, you can identify it easily. Additionally, when we were in the hospital, I observed a black and tan miniature pinscher type dog with multiple open wounds on both back legs with the muscles exposed, tendons exposed, bone exposed. And I would describe the dog as septic.
Based on your training experience, do you have an opinion as to whether or not these conditions that you observed that you just described to the judge, do you have an opinion of whether or not these conditions were either exacerbated or caused as a result of the dog's living conditions?
While it was obvious that many of the dogs were down in the hind end, it was also obvious that those dogs, that condition was not causing them pain. There's two types of being down in the hind end. One where it's traumatic and the animal can feel all of that sensation, and one where they no longer have any sensation, essentially being paralyzed. So it was obvious that the dogs we saw that were down in the hind end were paralyzed. However, all of the wounds that we did see, I would attribute to improper care, wound bandaging, sitting in their own urine and feces.
And that's sitting in the urine and feces, that would be part of the living conditions, is that correct?
That is correct. It causes urine scald and ultimately infection and sepsis and death.
Would you consider the condition that you observed of the home, these kennels, to be adequate shelter?
I would not. Shelter is a difficult thing to define. It's meant to provide protection from the elements. However, shelter is often defined as allowing an animal enough space to stand, turn around, lay down in a dry area outside of their own urine and feces. And because the majority of the crated animals could not get out of their own urine and feces, and it was evident they'd been sitting in there for a prolonged period of time, I would not consider that shelter adequate.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not the food was adequate, the food provided was adequate?
Well, we did note a large amount of kibble that was strewn all over the house. We do not use food available as a metric for if they're receiving proper food because it can be fresh, it can be new, we don't know how long it's been in the home. So the metric that we use is the body condition score of the animals. And because there were so many dogs that were underneath a body condition score that would be healthy, underneath a 4 of 9, I would, in my opinion, say that they were not receiving adequate food because of the volume of dogs that were underweight.
Do you have an opinion with regard to the water? Do you think the water was adequate?
No, it absolutely was not adequate, particularly for the dogs that were in the garage in over 90-degree temperatures. And Abby, who exhibited signs of dehydration, Additionally, when we opened that back door and all the dogs went straight for the empty dishes and waited for us to fill them, it was not adequate even for dogs that were kept indoors in an air-conditioned environment.
Your Honor, I don't have any more questions for this.
Ms. McKinley, do you have any questions for Ms. Jesus?
I do.
You may proceed.
You made statements regarding a dog named Chauncey that was laying there, could barely stand.
Correct.
Are you aware that he had come to the home in that condition from the rescue?
I am aware.
Did you see the notes on the dog?
I did view the veterinarian's notes, yes.
What did the veterinarian say?
The recommendation was for humane euthanasia.
So is that why they gave you medication?
They gave you medication, it is my understanding, to improve the quality of life in the animal so that the animal did not suffer.
Right. So they indicated that for now, give the animal Chauncey medication and see if he was able to adequately gain weight to see if there was something where he would be able to thrive.
A veterinarian cannot force an owner to humanely euthanize, they can only provide a recommendation.
Right.
So in lieu of what I assume was your desire to not humanely euthanize Chauncey, the medication was provided to improve quality of life.
Right. And as far as, you keep using the word squishy as far as the turf.
Correct.
Did you notice the hose? on the
I did.
bottom of her? Okay. Did you even think that maybe there was water being used? Water was leaking?
Yes, that would be my assumption, however, the smell smelled of urine and ammonia.
But it's possible that it was water.
Yes, it is.
As far as Butters goes and the quote-unquote kennel cough, did you see the notes from the veterinarian on Butters?
Yes, I did.
Did they say it was clearly kennel cough or it was a cough?
It was suspected kennel cough. A veterinarian will treat and diagnose based on symptoms. It's my understanding that diagnostics were declined.
Decline?
Yes.
Well, because we had a discussion on how to proceed.
Your Honor, I would object to her testifying.
Okay, and you can only ask questions now. You'll get a chance to testify.
But at that time, medication was prescribed for his cough.
Correct.
And as far as his feet, is it normal? And sometimes does it happen when dogs are paralyzed, that when they're dragging and their legs are wrapped, that sometimes the wrapping comes off or they chew it off, or there are times when it's not on there 100% of the time?
Absolutely, dogs in the hind require repetitive wound care.
Right. So it's possible and it's likely that because there were wounds there and there was a bandage on her that was noticed, and sometimes it did fall off, that there was an attempt to heal the wounds.
It was clear there was an attempt to bandage them.
Which would mean protection for the wounds.
Correct, but that would not resolve infection or necrosis.
Using the other microbial antibacterial items to put on there before.
You cannot use topical antibacterial items on an animal
So,
unless they're prescribed by a veterinarian.
right, so the veterinarian prescribed a honey-based topical for these dogs, which is in their notes in the veterinarian, which is what I have, which he told me how to apply it.
Again, she cannot answer a statement, only questions.
Okay. Are you aware that Rudy went to the veterinarian
Yes, I am.
as noted by, as requested by the Humane Center?
Yes.
Did you see or note that the veterinarian said he was not underweight?
I do not recall that.
From what I But is it possible that by the veterinarian standards, from what he stated or saw, that he said it was good he wasn't weighing, he didn't weigh more, that by his standard, so he wasn't pulling a lot of weight, that he was okay at his healthy weight? Is that possible?
In my opinion, no, because Rudy's head was also what I would consider to be concave, meaning muscular deterioration in the head as well, which would indicate that it was not just the hind end that was underweight, but the whole body.
Okay. But with that stated, do you normally go by or adhere to veterinarian requests? Is that something?
We would go by a veterinarian's recommendation. If I had evidence, they'd make that recommendation.
Okay. But it is possible they made that recommendation.
It's always possible.
Tazzy, the little 3-pounder puppy, you stated that he was having seizures. Is that correct?
It was documented in Investigator Nordstrom's report that he appeared to have a seizure while they were in the home.
So she said he appeared to have a seizure, but she wasn't sure?
She's not a veterinarian, but based on her medical training, yes.
Okay. So after taking Tazzy to the veterinarian, were you able to read that report?
I don't recall.
Is it possible he was not having a seizure and he had a neurological condition, which is why he was falling over and going in circles?
We are trained to identify the difference between ataxia and a wobbliness or pre-existing condition, and the difference between a seizure or a grand mal seizure.
If you were able to review his veterinary record and they stated that this was not a seizure and it was due to wobbly syndrome, ataxia, like you stated, would that be sufficient, an understanding that this was not a seizure as declared by the veterinarian?
Your Honor, I think pre-trial there was mention of petitioner not presenting any exhibits, so if she's not going to present any exhibits, then I don't want her to. So if she has that exhibit, that's fine.
Yes, and Ms. McKinley, do you have that, whatever it is you're referring to present as an exhibit?
No,
Okay, well then you...
don't ask it.
That's, yes.
You made a statement stating that Miranda,
Investigator Nordstrom, yes.
Investigator Nordstrom, stated that there was a statement made about moving to have more animals. Is that correct?
Moving to a different area, not specifically to add more animals, but that did not have the same loss.
Okay. Is that on recording?
No,
So
we
it's
don't wear a
just-
body camera.
Pardon me?
We don't wear a body camera.
Okay. So this is just a statement that she made.
Correct.
Okay. You stated that there were only 3 dogs in the vehicle when you pulled up to the residence.
One of them was, there was a 4th, but that dog was let loose and entered the backyard. At least to my recollection.
But is it possible there were 4 dogs in the car?
Yes.
Then you stated that there was no dogs, there were no dogs in the backyard initially.
Aside from the one that had come from the vehicle, correct?
Is it possible that there's, that might not be the case, that maybe there was a misunderstanding? Because is it possible there was a dog already in the backyard and there were 4 dogs in the car?
Not to my recollection.
But there might be a body camera or something, maybe would there be a body camera or any kind of evidence as to?
I do believe the police were wearing body cams.
Okay. When Ms. Nordstrom entered the residence, initially, there was a statement made about loud barking, and an assumption was made, or I think the statement was made that these barks came from the dogs in cages because they weren't used to people coming in. Is that correct?
Well, just that they'd gotten riled up, whether it was excitement or reactivity.
Did she mention that there were a lot of small dogs in the house running around at the time she came in?
Yes.
Okay. Did she mention they were barking hysterically because they're little, they were
Yes.
barking because there's no dogs? And as far as you're concerned and with your expertise, you're saying that a lot of the dogs that were underweight, according to your observations, were you aware that those dogs had seen veterinarians recently?
No, not unless you provided us documentation. We did see the basket that you brought us of medication, but we didn't see other records than what we obtained from the vet.
Okay. But it is possible that they received veterinary care that you may not be aware of.
Yes, that's possible.
Okay. So you had stated that Ms. Nordstrom said that she was not allowed access to the bedrooms and the bathroom. That's
Correct. That was what was written in her report.
Okay. Do you know if she asked if she could have access?
I do believe she asked.
Is it possible she didn't ask and she just walked in? She walked through the house, went into the,
Your Honor, I believe it's just becoming too speculative.
Sustained.
the wheelchairs and boxes, did anyone open a box?
We did not.
So is it possible that the wheelchair boxes were empty?
Yes, it is.
So speculating that there were a bunch of new wheelchairs and boxes unused, it's possible that was...
It was speculation, that's correct.
It's possible that the boxes were just there to save for parts. It's possible that, right? Because you noticed other wheelchairs in the garage. Or did you notice?
My observation was of some parts and pieces, but there was too much debris for me to tell if anything was intact.
And you stated there was a min pin type of dog?
Yes.
With muscle exposure.
Yes.
Are there photographs of those?
Yes, we did take photographs of that dog.
Okay. Was this on the leg or the hind end?
Both legs,
Okay.
back legs.
Exactly. And is it possible when you have dogs that are sick or that are special needs or they have an infection of some kind that they may be walking through the house and not make it outside and may have an accident inside?
Yes, that's possible.
So it's possible that when you walked in, a dog had just defecated or had diarrhea or throw up because they were sick or they couldn't make it outside.
Not in the volume of feces and urine that I observed.
And specifically regarding the kitchen area. Ruby, are you aware that she was under veterinary care?
I'm aware that she had been to a veterinarian, yes.
And that she was being treated for her wounds on her open tail?
I'm aware that the veterinarian conveyed to the Chandler Police Department that they were very concerned about that dog.
Right. And are you aware that there were 2 doors accessing the garage?
I do believe that that was discovered later after the fire department was pulling the debris and trying to get the garage door open, that they did find another door.
So there was a door accessible from the garage to the outside backyard,
That was the door we entered in, yes.
and then there was a door accessing the house to the garage.
I never saw that one.
But it's possible there was another door for access.
It's always possible, yes.
far as food is concerned, is it possible that there are some dogs that just don't eat a whole lot? There's some dogs that scarf their food down, which can explain why some dogs, in your opinion, are underweight.
It does not explain the level of them being underweight. Dogs can be picky eaters, dogs can need to be separated to be fed, but in my experience, an owner typically separates them and ensures that they are receiving what they need to be the proper weight.
Okay.
No other questions? Any redirect, Mr. Yu?
Just real briefly, Your Honor. When AHS investigators visited Chauncey, he was laying laterally in feces, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's depicted in that picture that we entered into evidence.
Yes, that's correct.
And the owner was right there present, am I correct?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Petitioner?
Yes.
Was there any attempt made to pick up that feces or clean that off the ground?
Not when the investigators were present.
And we also talked about, I think it was Butters, about this cough. Petitioner was indicating perhaps that there wasn't an official diagnosis for kennel cough. And why was that?
In my experience, a veterinarian will see the symptoms exhibited by an animal and diagnose and treat based on those symptoms. Diagnostic testing is completely separate from that, but they would identify the symptoms and attempt to treat based on what they see in front of them.
The test could have been done, correct?
There were additional tests that were offered and declined.
There was also mention regarding how bandaging and wound wraps could come off. Let's talk about Ruby. That was the dog that was in the bathroom with the necrotic tail, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you see any bandages either on the tail or in the kiddie pool or anywhere near that animal?
No, and that location on the animal would have been very difficult to secure a bandage. It's my understanding that surgery was recommended. However, that dog would have needed to be in a very clean environment to ensure that that infection did not continue.
And in your opinion, was that dog in any type of clean environment?
No, not in my opinion.
I have no other questions.
You may step down.
State calls Sergeant Basie.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please take the witness stand.
Sergeant Basie, can you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Sergeant Nicole Basie, B as in Victor, A-S-E-Y.
And how are you employed?
I'm currently a police officer with the city of Chandler.
And how long have you been a police officer with the city?
I've been a police officer for 15 years, and the last 4 years I've been the rank of sergeant.
I'm sorry?
The last 4 years I've been the rank of sergeant.
Okay. And do you have any do you hold any special certifications that would be relevant to this case?
Yes, in 2014 I obtained my Certified Humane Investigator certificate that I obtained through the University of Missouri.
And how long did it take for you to obtain that certification?
It was 3 different courses that were 40 hours each, so a total of 120 hours.
And did you receive any post-academy training having to do with animal crimes?
Yes, over the several past years, I've taken probably 10 to 15 different courses offered through either the Humane Society, AZ Post, or Maricopa County Sheriff's Office.
And you're basically the animal cruelty officer for the Chandler Police Department, is that correct?
Correct.
Is there any unit in the city of Chandler that, is there any animal cruelty unit in the city of Chandler?
No, there's not.
So you being, well, let's try that. How many animal cruelty investigations have you been involved in?
Since 2011, I'd have to say either involved in or the case agent over 100.
And how did you become involved in this investigation?
I was contacted by an officer on the 8th of September regarding a case where there were some dogs that were trying to, that rescue was trying to get back, and they were seeking advice on what they should do and how they should proceed.
As part of your investigation, did you have a conversation with the petitioner in this case?
I did, several days after the initial contact with that case agent.
Would that be on September the 19th?
That's correct.
In terms of that contact, what was the discussion regarding?
I had a conversation about the petitioner receiving medical care for some of the dogs that received notices. We had talked about the two particular dogs in question that a rescue was trying to obtain back. She made clear that she was not going to give back. We also had talked about her possibly working with the Humane Society and surrendering some of her dogs to get them adopted quicker.
You just mentioned somebody requesting dogs returned. Would that be Butters, a dog named Butters and a dog named Choco?
Correct.
And that request was made by a individual by the name of Rebecca Arizmendi, is that correct?
Yes.
And she was upset, essentially, that she was not getting any updates regarding the conditions of these two animals, is that correct?
Correct.
As a part of, did you, in terms of your discussions, I think you mentioned that part of the discussion was to talk about the 5 dogs that the Arizona Humane Society had ordered her to take to the vet, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you confirm that she did take these dogs to the vet?
She had advised that she did, and I had let her know that I was going to be following up with the vet office that she chose to get a copy of those records.
On that same day, did you receive medical records from the petitioner's veterinarian?
I did.
And was that vet from Market Street Pet Hospital?
Correct.
And with regard to Chauncey, what did the records indicate?
If I recall correctly, it was that the dog was underweight, could not stand or walk on her own. If I recall, it had a body conditioning score of 2.
Was there also some specific mention regarding pain in the hind limbs?
Yes, that there was deep pain in the hind limbs.
And then the state of the pelvic limbs, do you recall what the state of the pelvic limbs were?
I'd have to refer to my report.
Do you have a copy of it in front of you?
I do.
Did you prepare that report close in time to when this happened?
Correct.
And it's accurate?
Yes.
And it would help refresh your recollection regarding the condition of the pelvic limbs that was indicated by the vet from the Market Street Pet Hospital?
Yes.
If you could go ahead and just look at it, tell me when your recollections were correct.
Are you talking about the deep pain that's present in the hind limbs for Chauncey?
The pelvic limbs for Chauncey?
The only other notes that I have for her in my report was that she was emaciated and lethargic.
Was that also the dog, Chauncey, that was found laying laterally in its own feces?
Yes,
According to earlier testimony?
yes.
Let's go on to Rudy. What do you recall regarding the medical records that was submitted for Rudy?
For Rudy, I recall that he had bloody diarrhea, that he had open wounds in his hind legs, but he was also down behind and had various ulcers in the back end.
Was there a recommendation for deworming of that dog?
Yes,
And what was the petitioner's response to that?
she declined.
There was a third dog that you received medical records for by the name of Sunny, is that correct?
Yes,
And that was not one of the dogs that was ordered by AHS to the vet hospital, or to the vet, is that correct?
correct.
So petitioner voluntarily brought that dog in?
Yes.
What was the condition of Sunny?
The son was also down and hind, the vet had recommended a double amputation of both rear legs due to bone exposure.
So she had brought in these dogs voluntarily, or actually at the direction of Arizona Humane Society, just so that I'm clear. These dogs were seen and treated, or treatment was recommended, is that correct?
Correct.
And then they didn't remain at the vet.
No, they did not.
These dogs were then returned to the petitioner, is that correct?
Yes,
And then she went back home with them.
yes.
What ultimately happened with these three dogs?
They were euthanized.
On September 20th, did you have another conversation with petitioner?
Yes.
And what was that nature of that conversation?
Conducting additional medical treatment that the vet had recommended for the animals that she received a notice for. We had also discussed further working with the Humane Society to get her to surrender some more of the dogs. We had also discussed, just because I was told there was a large amount of animals in the home, that the potential of the ammonia levels in that house, and just the continued care of those dogs.
So basically, just your concerns regarding the ammonia levels. Was there any discussion regarding the number of dogs that she possibly had?
She estimated that she had 25 to 30 animals.
Was that a concern to you?
Yes.
Did you also discuss the injuries that were observed on these dogs, or the conditions of these dogs?
The ones that were taken to the vet, yes, and just ensuring that they continue treatment with that vet.
Did you speak about wound care?
And just ensuring that they continued wound care, got the appropriate treatment, changing the bandages.
At some point in time, because there's so much going on in terms of what needed to be done, did you make a comment that perhaps she was in over her head?
Yes, I did.
And what was her response to your comment?
She agreed that she was.
2 days, at the close of that conversation, did she agree to follow up with the recommendations of the veterinarian?
Yes, to make additional appointments with the vet.
2 days after this conversation, did you have a conversation with Dr. Jennings from the Market Street Pet Hospital?
I did.
Did you discuss Chauncey?
Yes.
And what did Dr. Jennings say in general about the condition of Chauncey?
That she was very sick.
Did he essentially confirm the reports, the written reports from the vet hospital?
Yes.
And what condition was there a discussion regarding Sunny?
Yes, that she was anemic and that she needed to have both rear legs amputated.
And the bone exposure that was earlier mentioned in the report, did the doctor confirm that?
Correct. She had an appointment that day if she was healthy enough to have both legs amputated.
Did you have a discussion with Dr. Jennings about a dog named Ruby?
Yes.
And not to be confused with Rudy, was this the first time that you've heard of a dog named Ruby?
It was, yes.
And what was the discussion regarding Ruby?
That Ruby had a tail that she had chewed down to approximately 3 inches that needed to be amputated. that she had ulcers on the back end, and was also anemic.
You mentioned 3 inches. What breed of dog is this?
She's a husky.
Do huskies typically have a tail longer than 3 inches?
Yes.
There was no, prior to this report, there was no mention of Ruby in any of the Arizona Humane Society reports, is that correct?
Correct.
She was found ultimately during the search warrant in the bathroom, is that correct?
Yes.
Presumably she was hidden in that room.
Yes.
After speaking with Dr. Jennings, did you receive some more medical reports from the vet tech from that hospital?
Yes.
The reports, what did that report indicate?
The 2 that were sent that day were 2 additional dogs that we were not aware of that the petitioner brought in that were deceased already.
So, in addition to bringing these 3 dogs that were ordered by the Arizona Humane Society, she brought in 2 deceased dogs.
Yes.
And was one of the deceased dogs named Duke?
Yes.
And he was identified as a male lab, 2 years old, is that correct?
Correct.
And the cause of death was unknown.
Correct.
And then second dog was a Yorkshire Terrier, only 7 months old, is that correct?
Correct.
And his name is Ben.
Yes.
After receiving all this information from the vet, speaking with the vet, knowing what you knew from reviewing these reports, what did you do?
I drafted the search warrant for the residents.
And were you able to obtain that search warrant?
Yes, it was signed by a judge
And then when was it served?
that evening on the 22nd.
Were you part of the team that served it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Were you part of the team that served it?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me, I guess essentially what happened when you arrived at the Kessler location?
I arrived on scene and contacted the petitioner in her vehicle. She had actually called the police department out of concern for some other people that were near her home. I contacted her and let her know that we had a search warrant for her residence and that we'd be going inside to check on the welfare of her animals. She stated that I would not like what I was going to see, and then she proceeded to escort the team through the backyard because there was a concern for her mother, so we wanted to find her first.
So she was warning you about the horrific conditions that you're about to observe?
She said that I would not like what I was going to see.
And then what did you see when you went into the yard?
A lot of debris, the smell, the feces, urine. I do recall a single dog in the backyard. I recall seeing a bunch of bowls that were either empty or turned over, mainly a lot of clutter. And then I just recall the smell of ammonia getting stronger as we approached the back door.
And did you observe any water?
I did not.
The testimony, you were sitting next to me when investigator Jesus was talking. Do you agree with her description of the yard? Was that consistent with what you observed?
Yes, it was.
Did you make entry in that home?
I did.
And talking generally, how big would you estimate this home to be?
Under 1,000 square feet.
And what happened as you made entry in the home as that patio door was open?
A large amount of animals, dogs came running out. Some were mobile, some were dragging their hind end. They all immediately rushed us, the investigators. And then most of them were looking at the water bowls trying to drink water.
But those water bowls were empty.
Correct.
Did you make any did you make note of any general conditions of the animals that you saw at that point?
I noticed that some of the animals appeared thin, some of them had bandages, open wounds, filthy, dirty, covered in urine, feces. Those are the ones that I initially saw that came out of the residence.
After that door was open, did you step into the home?
I did.
What happened as you stepped into the home?
My eyes immediately began to water. The back of my throat was starting to burn, and it was very difficult to breathe
And why was that?
due to the ammonia levels.
What did you smell? if any?
Urine, ammonia, feces, what I recall is like infection, like a necrotic skin, and then just overall just a foul smell.
Infection, that would be like rotting flesh? That would be an accurate description?
Yes, I didn't see that right when I walked in, but that's just what it reminded me of.
Did you see, what did you see crates in the?
I did.
How would you describe that?
When you walk into the kitchen, there was crates that were stacked. There was crates stacked in the, I guess what you call the dining area. Crates stacked in the living room near the front door to where you couldn't access the front door. There was a playpen with animals in it. There was additional loose dogs that were in the corner. That's what I'm calling.
Let the record reflect, I'm showing defendant with an item marked as States 8.
Right.
I'm going to show you what I marked as States Exhibit 8. What, is that a picture?
It is a picture.
And what is it a picture of?
Right when you walk through the back door, there were several bowls that contained about 3.5 bowls that had some food in it, and then some other empty bowls.
You mentioned that there would have been about 3.5 bowls of food inside that patio area. Would the dogs in the backyard have access to this food if the patio door was closed?
No,
Would the dogs in the home in the crates would have access to this food?
no,
Would the dogs in the closet or in the closed bedrooms have access to this food?
no,
Would the dogs in the crates in the closed bedrooms have access to this?
they would not.
Would the dogs in the closed bathroom have access to this food?
No,
Would the dog in the garage, in the closed garage, have access to this food?
no,
Would the dogs in the garage and the crates have access to this food?
no.
And you also heard the testimony of Inspector or HSH Rep. Ruthie Jesus with her description of the interior of that area as you walked in be consistent with what you observed?
Yes,
Did you make entry into the kitchen and living room areas of that home?
yes,
And Your Honor, did I make a
You did not.
motion? I'd like a motion to admit that exhibit.
Any objection to State's Exhibit 8? 8 is admitted.
What did you observe in terms of the condition of the kitchen and living room areas?
just like the overall rooms, you're saying?
Yeah, just the condition, like what you observed. That was,
Several crates stacked, a lot of clutter, urine, feces on the floor, various blankets, dirty towels, 2 couches that didn't have crates on them that appeared to be used, I'm assuming by humans or dogs that were free roaming, and just a lot of debris throughout the house.
did you observe any of the crates with more than one dog in it?
Yes,
Can you describe the judge what you saw with that regard?
there were some crates that contained 2 or more dogs in them that they shared the same kennel that were stacked on top of other dogs that were across the kennels.
Did you make note of the conditions of the puppy pads and the towels that were in these crates?
Yeah, there were caked with feces, soaked with urine, and then the crates had bowls that were either empty or turned over.
Did you observe any water in any of these?
None of the crates had water.
And in terms of water in the house, what is your recollection as to water in the house?
I did not see any bowl that contained any amount of water.
In the entire house?
Correct.
How about the yard?
I did not see any. The only water that I saw, was when the Humane Society provided water to the dogs that exited the house.
What about the garage?
No water was seen.
You heard also the testimony as described by Ms. Jesus. Would you agree with her description as to the living and kitchen area?
Yes.
In terms of the bedrooms, what did you observe in regard to the bedrooms?
Both bedrooms, the doors were closed when we made entry. Initially, another investigator walked into the rooms before I did. When I did make entry, there was additional dogs, some were loose, some were stacked in crates. The same condition of those bedrooms was the same throughout the house. There was feces, urine, food, kibble kind of thrown about the room. The rooms were very dark. We couldn't find a light to turn on, so it's hard to see close up without a flashlight.
And you also heard the testimony as described by Ms. Jesus. Would you agree with her as to her assessment of the conditions of those bedrooms?
Yes.
And then moving on to the bathroom, what did you observe that was in the bathroom?
Initially, there was dogs in there, 2 of them. When I actually went back in, the dogs had actually been removed, and on the floor it was caked with feces and urine. You couldn't access the toilet area, and then the tub was empty at that point. It was also dirty.
You couldn't access the toilet area. Was there another toilet in that house?
No.
So if a person needed to use the toilet, they would not be able to use that one that was the only one that was in the house.
At that time, no, there was too much clutter.
And Ms. Jesus' description of the bathroom, would you agree that that would be consistent with what you observed as well?
Yes.
Did you make entry in the garage at some point?
Yes.
What did you observe there?
Initially, there was dogs. I recall one being loose and then others that were stacked or that were in their crates. When I returned to the garage later, Mace said I had already removed the dogs, and I observed those crates being filled with either random pieces of food or feces and urine, and the overall condition of the crates, they were just very, very dirty.
Now, what was the smell like in there?
It was a very strong smell of ammonia and feces again.
Was there any ventilation in that garage?
No.
Would you agree with Ms. Jesus when she indicated that it was about 90 degrees in there?
Yes, it was a lot warmer than the rest of the home.
What time was that?
The search warrant was served at approximately 5:30 p.m.
So not during the heat of the day even?
Correct.
Was the description given by Ms. Jesus regarding the garage consistent with what you observed?
Yes.
Now, with regard to food, based on the conditions of the backyard, that you observed the bedrooms, the bathroom, the garage that you just talked about and described, would you consider access to food in those areas to be adequate?
No.
Would you consider access to, based on the conditions now with the backyard, let's include the living room and the kitchen, as well as the bedrooms, the bathroom, and the garage, would you consider access to waters in those areas to be adequate?
No.
Based on what you observed of the conditions of the backyard, the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathroom, the garage, would you consider those areas as you just described as being adequate shelter?
No.
At some point in time, after you made entry, the fire was called, is that correct? Fire department?
That's correct.
Why was that?
We wanted to attempt to get an ammonia reading in the home.
And why did you want to do that? Was that to determine whether or not it was safe?
Correct, for humans or pets to be inside the home.
And did fire respond?
They did.
And just tell me how that occurred and what happened.
So initially, the fire department had their own reading. They suited up in gear. They went to the back door and they refused to go in. They said the levels were too high. So they had suggested a industrial hygienist be called to the scene to give a better reading of the various levels throughout the home.
Was it at that point in time that the decision was made to evacuate the home?
Correct.
Did the industrial hygienist respond to the scene?
He did.
And what happened after he responded to the scene?
He advised that the readings were too high for us to be inside and suggested several hours of ventilation with the doors open and the windows open to try to bring those ammonia levels down before we made re-entry.
And did the fire department attempt to ventilate the house as you described?
Yes, they did.
How did they do that?
Opening the front door, the back door, the windows, and adding several fans, industrial-sized fans, to get those levels down.
Was there somewhat of an urgency to get some of these animals out of the home?
We were concerned, yes, due to the medical state and also because of the ammonia levels.
And as a result of that urgency, what did the fire department personnel do?
They assisted in bringing the dogs out to the Humane Society so they can then take custody.
Before they made entry into the home, did they don rubber boots?
They did, yes.
Did they don disposable coveralls?
Yes.
Did they don rubber gloves?
Yes.
Did they go in there with self-contained breathing apparatuses?
Yes.
And after they did that, did they in fact remove some of the dogs?
Yes, they did.
I'm going to show you what I've marked as State's Exhibit number 9, which I'm showing you the petition. Is that a series of 3 pictures?
Yes.
And what do those pictures depict? Starting with the first one, I'm sorry.
The first one shows the fans that were installed by the fire department to air out the home. You want me to continue?
Yes, please.
The second photo shows personnel from the fire department in full gear with breathing apparatuses and rubber boots walking through the living room area. And the third picture again shows two members of the fire department, and the third one was the hygienist walking through the home with the rubber gloves, the suits, and the breathing apparatuses.
State would move for admission of State's 9.
Any objection? States 9 is admitted.
At some point in time, fire personnel as well as Humane Society personnel is allowed to enter back into the home, is that correct?
Correct. We were not seeing the main areas of the home.
How long would you estimate you were waiting before the house was deemed safe enough for you to enter?
About 2 to 3 hours.
How many dogs were ultimately removed from the home as a result of the seizure?
55 live and 5 deceased.
At some point in time after the house was essentially cleared, did you have a conversation with the petitioner?
Yes.
Did you ask her if there might be some deceased dogs in the home?
I did.
Why did you ask her that?
Based on my training and experience, typically individuals who have hoarding tendencies sometimes will place deceased animals in freezers.
And what was her response when you asked her if she had any deceased dogs?
Initially, she stated no. I explained that I was going to check the freezer, and that's when she indicated there was at least 3.
And based on that statement, did you look into the refrigerator?
I looked in the fridge and the freezer.
Let the record reflect I'm showing petitioner states 10. Can you, is states 10 a series of pictures?
Yes.
And with regard to the first picture, what is that picture there?
This is a picture of the freezer when you first open it, where you can see human food, and then down below bags or puppy pads that are rolled up.
What do you see on the second picture?
This is a puppy pad that was rolled up that contained what I believe to be feces and urine.
Was that basically a closer picture of what you observed? A close-up of what?
Yes.
Okay. And then the third picture?
The same. It was a black bag that contained another animal that was wrapped in a puppy pad.
And then the next picture?
This would be one of the deceased animals that we discovered.
So you opened the the wrap essentially and discovered
Correct.
the next picture.
Same, once we unwrapped the puppy pad, there was another deceased dog.
And then the next picture.
Same, this was another deceased dog that we discovered.
And what's the condition of the puppy pad that that dog's grabbed to?
It appears to be urine and feces.
State would move for admission of state's 10.
Any objection? State's 10 is admitted.
As part of your conversation with the petitioner, how long did she indicate she was in that home?
Approximately 4 years.
Did she indicate that she was operating a rescue out of that home?
Yes, for less than a year.
So she took responsibility for the care of these animals by admitting to you that she operated this rescue.
Yes.
Now, did you have a conversation, during this conversation, was there an admission, again, that she was, quote, in over her head?
Yes.
Can you tell the court what that context, how that subject came up and what the context was?
We were just discussing the number of animals, and she was unaware that she had 55 animals in her home. And that she had taken on too many animals to be able to care for them all properly.
Did she indicate how many dogs that she thought she had?
The original 25 to 30.
So in her conversation with her, she didn't really even realize that she had 55 dogs?
Correct.
Did you have a conversation with her about her employment?
She stated she was not employed.
The puppies that were found in the freezer, did you ask her about those?
I did.
And what did she say with regard to those puppies?
She had stated that they had passed away over the weekend, and she put them in the freezer with the intention of taking them to the vet office on a Monday, but she had not done that yet.
Did they all pass away on the weekend, or were there some that passed away before that?
My understanding was that they passed away like several weeks before.
But regardless, they passed away while they were under her care.
Correct.
As part of your interview with her, did she tell you that she would take dogs out of their kennels and clean their wounds and put medicine on them and then rebandage them?
Yeah, she said that she did that.
Do you feel that this was a truthful statement?
No, I do not.
Why do you believe that it was not accurate?
Due to the status and how the dogs were, the crates, how filthy they were, the urine, the feces, the conditions of several of the dogs and their injuries, whether it be open wounds, blood present, bone exposure, I didn't feel as though that they were being changed as often as she had indicated.
Specifically, did you make note of a dog by the name of Victory?
Yes, I later learned her name was Victor.
What was Victory's condition when you observed it?
Her rear legs were bandaged. They were covered in feces and urine. The bandage was so tight that it had, to me, it appeared to be able to grow into her skin. And it was extremely swollen compared to her front paws. And I just remember smelling infection and seeing the skin that was that was dying or dead.
What happened with Victory?
Victory was ultimately euthanized.
She also indicated to you that she would let dogs out of the kennels, rotate them 3 times a day. Did you find that to be an accurate statement?
No, I did not.
She said that she would fill their water bowls 3 or 4 times a day. Would you believe that that was an accurate statement?
No.
She said that she would change the pee pads and the towels in these kennels 2 or 3 times a day. Would you believe that that would be an accurate statement?
No.
She also indicated to you that she had an open feeder. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would that be accurate?
When you first walk in the back door, those 3.5 bowls, those were open and free. Yes.
But again, there were How many bowls would you estimate of food was there in that feeder?
If I recall, 6, I believe.
Oh, I mean, full bowls.
3.5 if we were to to combine them all together.
And that was food for 55 animals, is that right?
Correct.
And many of them did not even have access to it.
Correct.
Did she indicate to you that these dogs had access to water all day?
Yes.
And would that be accurate?
No.
She said that she was also always cleaning. Would you describe that statement as an accurate statement?
No, I would not.
So overall, what you observed in terms of the conditions of the dogs, these statements that she made, would that be, sorry, what you observed of the conditions of the dogs consistent with what she told you?
No.
Was what you observed of the conditions of the kennels, of the crates, consistent with what she told you?
No.
Was what you observed of the backyard, or the house, or the garage, consistent with what she told you?
No.
Going back to the 2 dogs that were brought to the vet deceased, did you ask her how those dogs died?
I did.
What did she say happened to Duke?
She stated that it was, I believe, was a respiratory issue.
And what did she tell you about Ben, the 71-month-old Yorkie?
That he had neurological issues and also an upper respiratory issue.
Let's talk about, did you have a conversation with her regarding Butters?
Yes.
Butters was a dog that was found with open wounds on his paws, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long did she tell you that Butters had wounds on his paws?
A few weeks.
You had a discussion with her regarding Ruby, is that correct?
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, Rudy.
Yeah, correct.
Rudy was the dog that had a wound on his limb, is that correct?
Yes.
And how long did she indicate to you that he had this wound on his limb?
At least a month.
Did she indicate that she had knowledge that it had become infected?
Yes.
Did she indicate to you that she knew that he was chewing on it?
Yes.
Did she indicate to you that she knew that the bone was exposed?
Yes.
Your Honor, are we on 11?
Yes, we are on 11.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm showing petitioner with marked that states in that. I'm showing what I've marked that states Exhibit 11. Is that a stapled photographs, 2 photographs stapled together?
It is, yes.
And what does the first photograph indicate or show?
It shows a dog that's tan and white and one paw that has bone exposed.
And is that dog Rudy?
Yes, it is.
And what's the second picture?
It is a close-up of the back rear paw with the bones exposed.
And all right, could I have states 1? This photograph was taken on September 22nd, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
I'm going to show you what I previously marked as states exhibit number 1. Can you tell us what that is a picture of?
This is a picture of Rudy in the backyard laying down with his rear paws being bandaged.
And that was taken on September the 19th, is that correct?
That's correct.
So 3 days before this picture of the exposed bone.
Yes.
And that bandage was placed presumably by the vet that she had just taken these dogs to, is that correct?
I'm not sure who placed the bandage on there.
And 3 days later, the condition of the dog is seen on exhibit number 11, is that correct?
Correct, without the bandage.
Unbandaged, bone exposed.
Yes.
State would move for admission of 11.
Any objection? 11 is admitted.
Did you have a discussion with her after talking about Ruby, about a dog named Ruby?
I did, yes.
And was that the dog that was found in the bathroom?
Yes,
The dog with the husky tail that was chewed down to 3 inches?
correct.
Did you ask her how long she had that? Did you ask about the condition of the dog? Did you ask her about the condition of that dog?
Yes, she said it had been like that for over a month.
After talking to her about these animals and the wounds and the knowledge of the injuries, did you ask her if she felt like she failed to take care of the dogs and their wounds?
I asked her and she said she did the best that she could.
We've talked about now these specific dogs in this case. How would you describe the general condition of the dogs that you observed on the day of the search warrant?
Extremely poor.
Some of these dogs had special needs, is that correct?
Yes,
Would that be the majority of them?
correct.
And what do you know about dogs with special needs in terms of their care?
It takes a lot more work than a typical dog that doesn't have special needs. In terms of if they're down in hind, making sure that they don't drag themselves, ensuring that they don't have open wounds, ensuring that they don't lay in their own feces or urine if they're not mobile, ensuring that it's cleaned up immediately if they do soil themselves. That's the basis.
And are you familiar with a condition called knuckling?
Yes, my understanding is where the front paw is bent forward, so the dog is then walking on the paw that's now bent forward.
Walking on the knuckle, essentially?
Yes.
And did you observe dogs that had this condition?
Yes.
And if these dogs aren't cared for and they're allowed to drag and allowed to walk on their knuckle, is it likely that injury is going to result?
Yes, open wounds. If those open wounds aren't treated, it can lead to infection.
Would the wounds be more likely to become infected if they were exposed to feces and urine?
Yes.
In your opinion, Sergeant Massey, would these wounds be exacerbated or caused by the conditions that you observed personally in the petitioner's home?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions. Oh, just one more. There was mention about wheelchairs. Petitioner indicated that perhaps maybe there might be empty boxes of wheelchairs. Did you observe wheelchairs in the home?
I did in the garage.
And were they in boxes or out of boxes?
These ones that I saw were not in boxes.
And did you observe any of the dogs in the home utilizing any wheelchairs?
None of the dogs utilized a wheelchair.
No other questions?
You may cross-examine.
Can you describe what dog was knuckling?
I'd have to refer to the medical notes. I don't have that in front of me.
Was a dog described as knuckling in any vet record?
I'd have to refer to the vet notes. There were several vet records that were sent to me, and I'd have to look through them.
Did you see any bowls in the sink?
I do not recall seeing bowls in the sink.
Did you see any dishes, like dog dishes, in the dishwasher?
I did not open the dishwasher.
So, because you went there at a certain time, is it possible that these dogs were fed inside and outside with bowls during their breakfast or dinner?
It's possible.
You said there were 2 to 3 dogs in a kennel, is that correct?
Correct.
How many dogs were actually in a kennel?
I don't have that number. I don't know how many were free versus in kennels.
Did you witness 3 dogs in a kennel?
I recall seeing at least 2 to 3 dogs in kennels, yes.
I said 3.
My recollection is 2 to 3.
So pictures would show that there's 2 or 3, right? But you're saying-
It should, unless they were removed beforehand, yes.
You used the word hidden when you said there was a dog hidden in the bathroom, is that correct?
That was my word.
Yeah.
It was behind a closed door.
You used the word hidden, that's why.
Yeah, I could say that it was hidden and behind a closed door.
Because you didn't see it right away behind a closed door.
Correct.
You mentioned decline of care regarding diagnostics or vet records, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that when veterinarians prescribe or state that you could do a number of items, you could get diagnostics or medicine, or there could be a number of things done with a particular animal that you do not have to necessarily follow and do everything one day as they prescribe.
That's up to the owner, correct?
So it's possible that these veterinarians, when they were discussing quality of care or the diagnostics that were offered, it's possible they said we can do this or we can start with medication first.
It's possible, yes.
In their notes, veterinarians always write down what they suggest to an owner, and they always have to write down whether the owner declines or accepts. Doesn't mean that the owner has to.
Your Honor, I believe we'll get into the area of testifying here.
Sustained. Again, be sure to only ask questions at this time.
You mentioned Ruby, the amputation, possible amputation of her tail, and are you aware of what phantom pain is?
No.
Are you aware that a lot of dogs with disabilities that have no feeling in their hind, whether it's in their hind legs or their hind, including their tail, they often have something called phantom pain, where they believe that there's pain, so they'll just start chewing. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It is possible. Is it possible that Ruby had phantom pain? That's why she was chewing her tail.
I don't know that answer.
And as far as dog food in the bowls in the kitchen, it's possible that the dogs are fed separately in separate areas, outside, in their rooms, correct?
It's possible, yes.
You stated, the comment was made, she did the best she could.
Correct.
Okay, do you remember when that happened, that conversation happened, took place?
At the police department during our interview.
Any redirect?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Are you familiar with the term body conditioning score?
Yes.
What do you know that to be?
That there's an ideal weight for dogs. Typically 4 or 5 is ideal. Anything under that would indicate that the dog is underweight.
And so 3.5 would be under,
Correct.
2 would be under,
Correct.
3 would be under?
Correct.
Would these numbers be consistent with regular feeds?
No.
Do you believe that these dogs were fed regularly?
I do not.
I have no other question.
Okay. Sergeant, I have one question for you. Does Ms. McKinley live alone?
No, she does not. She lives with her mother. Or she lived with her mother.
She lived, so there were 2 people who lived in that home.
Correct.
Okay. Any additional questions based on the court's question, Ms. McKinley?
Yes. Based on that, how old is the petitioner's mom?
I believe she was 80, in her 80s, 84.
During your conversations with, well, did you talk to her mom?
I did not know.
What responsibility, strike that. Did you have a conversation with the petitioner regarding her mom's responsibility with regard to these dogs?
During the interview, when we were discussing the fact that there was no water in the bowl, she had made the statement that her mom did not fill those water bowls.
So it was indicated to you that responsibility to feed or to put water in the bowls was put upon her 84-year-old mom.
When she was not home, yes.
When you did have, when you served the search warrant on the home, the petitioner was there, is that correct?
She was in the driveway, yes.
And there was no water coming.
Correct.
I have no other questions.
Ms. McKinley, any additional questions for this witness?
Do you know the accurate age of Kathleen McLaughlin?
No, I don't have her birthday in front of me.
So you're guessing how old she is?
Estimating, correct.
You may step down.
State restaurant.
That's the conclusion of the state's evidence in this case. At this point, Ms. McKinley, is there any evidence you'd like to present?
No.
Okay, you may proceed with closing argument.
Your Honor, this is a person who twice acknowledged that she was in over her head. And yet, even after having admitted that, she never got any real help. She makes excuses. She twists the truth to create a narrative that she wants to advance from. She told Officer Basie she would let the dogs out of their kennels 3 times a day and rotate them out. Is that what was described by these 2 witnesses that we presented to you today? Pictures don't lie. She said that she would fill water bowls 3 to 4 times a day. She said that she would take the dogs and clean their wounds with medicine and rebandage them. Is that what we saw with regard to Victory and Rudy? Both of whom had to be put down. She said that she would change pee pads and towels in the kennels 2 to 3 times a day. Would that be consistent with what was observed? Those pictures. Pictures don't lie, Judge. And now, even after having been exposed, even with all this horrific evidence out in the open, she shows no remorse for creating this house of horrors. And how do I know that, Judge? I know that because we're here today, and she's requesting 13 of these dogs back. I'm here to object to that, Your Honor. These dogs need to go to people who are going to put an end to this nightmare for them. This person who wants these 13 dogs back is also the same person who surrendered 2 dead dogs to her dad. Duke, who had breathing issues, Ben, 7-month-old puppy, died of a respiratory infection. 5 dogs seized on September 22nd had to be euthanized. These dogs were in a condition where limbs had to be amputated. Some were unable to walk, unable to get up, to go urinate or defecate. Some were known to be experiencing deep pain, and that's from the vet's report. That's from conversations with the vet. Some had bones exposed from limbs, tails exposed, that they were chewing before they were humanely euthanized. 5 puppies found dead in the freezer. That's 12 dogs. 12 dogs that could not be saved. 47 were, including the 13 that she wants now. Now, this court has decided whether or not she gets these 13 back. And with all due respect, Your Honor, the answer should be emphatic. But it's the state's burden to prove by preponderance of the evidence that the defendant subjected these dogs to cruel neglect. As you know, Your Honor, that's just more likely than not. So we have to answer this question. Is it more likely than not that she failed to provide food, water, or shelter? Because that's the definition of cruel neglect. I would submit to you, based on the evidence presented, that she failed not only to do so beyond any doubt, but you know the standards by preponderance of the evidence. Let's talk about the food. You saw the picture, Your Honor. There was 3.5 bowls of food, scattered food in the feces, in the kennels, all around the house. Now, is this 3.5 bowls enough for these 55 animals? Some in the patio, some locked in crates, some locked behind doors. It's not just about access. It's about what Ruthie told you. It's about the condition of these dogs. Their body conditioning scores indicate that food was not adequate in that home. And that's the truth of it. If Your Honor finds that she did not fail and that these 3.5 bowls of food was enough, let's talk about water. The only mention of water was empty water bowls, flipped over water bowls. There was no water in the backyard, no water in the home, no water in the crates. Is it more likely than not that she failed to provide adequate water? The answer is yes. That alone, Your Honor, should be enough. If you find that, that alone should be enough to justify the forfeiture of these dogs. But let's talk about the last element, shelter. Was shelter adequately provided? On 9/8, when Officer Cohen first arrived at the scene to investigate, he could smell urine and feces from outside of the home. Officer Corbin also smelled feces. Hundreds of flies and feces on the ground. There was a picture of that backyard with all the flies. You can see exactly what was written in those reports, in those pictures. On 9/12, Inspector Nordstrom went to the house. Dogs stacked on top of each other. Strong smell of ammonia. You heard from Ruthie. She also indicated that is not recommended practice. You cannot stack dogs on top of each other on crates because, by definition, the feces and the urine are going to penetrate into the crate underneath. That brings us to 9/22, the date of the service of the search warrant. I don't want to spend too much time because we've gone through that. You've seen the pictures. But the backyard, again, feces, overwhelming smell of urine, overwhelming smell of ammonia. Inside the house, Officer Vasey told she was taken aback by the smell of ammonia. She teared up, her throat burned, her eyes burned. Overwhelming smell of urine, feces, rotting flesh. These were necrotic wounds that were soaking in urine. That's not adequate shelter. Crates of dogs stacked on top of each other. And the conditions in the living room and kitchen. Some with dogs, more than one dog in the same kennel. Crates with puppy pads and towels caked with feces and soaked in urine. Dogs found sitting in their own urine and feces. It's indicated in that picture of the dogs in the bathroom was disturbing. The German Shepherd, you see that picture, that dog is literally laying in feces. And in that pool, in the kiddie pool that was also in the bathroom, picture of Ruby, tail chewed. If you look at that picture, you see also bloody stool. The garage, 90 degrees in there, dark. Bedrooms are dark. Bathrooms are dark. She didn't have lights on even for these animals. They opened the door, it's dark in there. 90 degrees, dogs stacked on top of each other. Overwhelming smell of urine and feces. Floors covered with urine and feces. These were the conditions that were observed in their home. The fire department had to go in there. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Ammonia levels were so high that they were forced to order everyone out of the house. Fans had to be set up, windows and doors opened in order just to have the ammonia levels drop to safe levels. Before they could even go in, because there was an urgency to get some of these dogs out, the firefighters had to be suited in rubber boots, coveralls, rubber gloves, respirators. This was the kind of shelter that was provided. This was the kind of shelters that these dogs with special needs were subjected to. This shelter, I would argue, was inadequate for even regular dogs, but somewhat lost in all this is that these are special needs dogs. These are the most vulnerable dogs of the dog population. They all have medical conditions that require special care. Their conditions were certainly exacerbated and caused by the lack of care. The abhorrent conditions that you created in this house constitute an inadequate shelter, and it's the very definition of cruel neglect. I would ask you to uphold procedure and deny the Commission's request to retain custody of those 13 dogs.
Ms. McKinley? If you may stand if you would like to. If you feel more comfortable being seated, you may do that as well. Whichever you feel more comfortable doing.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would like to say that my home was improperly condemned by the city. It was kind of a spectacle when everything happened. My home is livable. I've been living there for 7 days. It is bright. Every room has lights. Dogs were not kept in dog spaces. Dogs were fed on a regular basis. Just because when you come into a home and you just see it at dinner time doesn't mean they weren't fed.
Your Honor, if I could interject, and I apologize, I just want to note that this is a closing statement, so whatever she says is not part of the evidence. In terms of new testimony.
Right. You are limited to arguing what was presented during the hearing, not what you would have testified to if you chose to testify.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. A lot of the dogs that arrived to me arrived in the condition they were in, including, is this one? No. Chauncey, am I allowed to talk?
You have elicited some testimony from the witnesses that some of the dogs were in poor condition when you got them.
Oh, I see.
So yes, you can present that as part of your closing argument.
Okay. Specifically, Chauncey, as some of these dogs in poor condition arrived 2 or 3 days prior to animal control coming. So, and the vet records show that they arrived in the condition they were in. It's not due to my neglect or not being able to provide vet care for them. All of these dogs did receive vet care and were under advisement for the vet. I know the emotions are high and the sensitive nature of this entire situation. My home is, like I said, it's livable. Friends and family have stayed over, and the dogs that I'm asking for are family members. Some of them have been with me for 10 years, 8 years, 7 years, 5 years, 4 years. They're not replaceable. You cannot replace these lives. And that is why I'm requesting those particular dogs. All of the dogs during this time did receive shelter. They did receive water. They did receive enough food. And I'm just asking the court and Your Honor for these particular dogs. That the reason that I continue on is for the dogs. And safety. I mean, they're family members, but they also provide a lot of safety and security to myself and my home. So I'm requesting only these dogs.
Anything else?
No.
Anything else in rebuttal argument?
Your Honor, just briefly, you know, these dogs can't take the stand, obviously, and tell you that this was neglect. You know. But the death of Duke and Ben should speak to you. The 5 dogs that were seized, that had to be immediately euthanized, should speak to you. The dead puppies in the freezer should speak to you. The conditions of this house should speak to you. And the injuries that we see in those pictures should speak to you. I'd ask that you deny the petition, Mr. Forrest.
Not considered evidence presented today. The state has to prove that the petitioner, Ms. McKinley, subjected the animals under her care and control to cruel neglect. Cruel neglect means to provide an animal necessary food, water, and shelter. The evidence presented today, Ms. McKinley, has convinced me by preponderance of evidence that these animals were not properly cared for. They lived in deplorable conditions. No animal should be forced to live in these conditions. You thought you had 25 to 30, you actually had 60, 5 were dead. You didn't even know how many animals you had. Their condition was ongoing. It wasn't just a one-stop, one check on them and they weren't good at one point. They developed these conditions because you just simply did not care for them appropriately. They were sitting in their own feces and urine, developing sores, could barely walk, were malnourished. You may have thought you were taking care of these dogs, but it's clear they weren't. The pictures speak for themselves. The condition that the animal control officer and the police officer, Humane Society and the police officer saw these dogs in is just unacceptable. I know you're only asking for the 13 family dogs. You're not asking for the balance of the dogs to be returned to you. But the dogs that you had, all of them were subjected to cruel neglect, so I am going to grant the seizing agency's request that these dogs not be returned to you. You have forfeited the right to have these dogs. You can appeal my decision because I need to actually prepare an order that goes specifically to the dogs that you were contesting. You can appeal my decision. If you do so, you must do so within 14 days of today's date. If we fail to file a notice of appeal within 14 days, you'll lose that right to appeal. And the dogs are not going to be given to anyone short of 14 days because you can exercise that right to appeal. But these dogs need to be in a home that will properly care for them. Okay, we're off the record, and I will ask at this point that, okay, we need to obviously leave in a very, calm condition.